know everybody loves it when I talk about Mahjong. And here's the Famicom Disk System of the most important Mahjong game out there. It wasn't the first. It wasn't the best, even when it was released. What made it important was what made people buy Famicoms, more than any other game of the 1983 crop. If you wanted a better Mahjong experience, you either needed to get 3 other people, or get a computer. And even in 1986, when Mahjong is no longer quite the draw that it was, we'll get to the new big draw in a couple episodes, it was still a no-brainer for Nintendo to release this version on the Famicom Disk System. You didn't have to spend 4,000 yen for that cartridge. Now it was just 2,500 yen. Plus the Famicom, plus the Disk System, but don't think about that. Although I've talked about Mahjong, the board game, a lot over the course of documenting all of these 8-bit games, I always feel the need to explain what it is, since I don't know when someone's going to be jumping into a video, and to my mostly American audience, Mahjong is this. That is extremely not Mahjong. The Mahjong that I'm talking about here is a game played with those same tiles. They're essentially a deck of cards. There are 3 suits numbered 1 to 10, tiles for each cardinal direction, and 3 color-coded tiles that are called dragons. There are 4 copies of each of these tiles in a Mahjong set. Chinese Mahjong uses more tiles than this, but this is what's used in Riichi Mahjong, which is what you'll normally find played in Japan. Normally Mahjong is played with 4 people, though in early video games like this, you'll often see a 2-player variant. The goal of the game is to build particular hands of 14 tiles. Most commonly, you're looking at sets of 3 and runs of 3, plus 1 leftover pair. But there's many more options beyond that. On your turn, you draw a tile from the stack, which gives you 14, and you see if you can go out, and then you choose 1 to discard. You can also take the last tile that your opponent discarded if it gives you a set or run. When a player goes out, they take a certain number of points from their opponent based on a number of conditions that they fulfilled. Those conditions are the heart of Riichi Mahjong, and the core to playing well is knowing how to build toward them. So what made Nintendo's Mahjong special? What made it the game that people had to play? I think it comes down to one simple thing. The interface was easy. The Famicom's resolution was high enough that you could read the tiles pretty well, something that was not a guarantee in the early days of video game consoles. And you could just hit left and right on the pad to select a tile, A to discard, and B to take a special action like pull a tile from your opponent, or declare that you've completed a hand. It doesn't sound like much talking about it 40 years later, but basic interface design like that really went a long way in the early days of video games. Barriers to entry, especially with computer games, could be extremely high. With this, you could zip through a full round of Mahjong in 15 minutes. Nintendo also had 3 difficulty levels with their game, and if you hit start, you had this cute little tea time for the pause screen. So that's how it was playing in 1983, but what about 1986 when this Famicom Disk System version was released? Well, at this point, Nintendo's 2 Mahjong games were still the only games on the platform. It's going to be Christmas of 1986 before anyone else has a Mahjong game. There are no additional features that were added to the Disk System version. It just basically loads the ROM for the game from disk, and then lets you play. So was Mahjong a big draw for the Disk System? Well, I don't really think so at this point. It might have been a nice bonus for someone, but anyone who was buying a Disk System already had a Famicom. And if they already had a Famicom, it was really likely that they already had Mahjong. It might have been a system seller back in 1983, but at this point, Mahjong's more of a system library patter.